Hello, I'm Eric O'Gray with True, and normally when I do training I talk about all the different products that True has and what they can mean, and like how to qualify customers when they come in the showroom, and what to do and what kind of questions to answer, and what to talk about. But today I'm really excited because we just installed a 24-inch kegerator, and I want to talk about everything that you can possibly dispense from a True beverage center or beverage dispenser, like the differences in the different beverage dispensers, all the different parts that you could possibly need depending on what the client is trying to accomplish, and really the history of the beverage delivery system. I'm going to talk about coffee extensively because that's really the hot thing right now. Actually, it's the cold thing when it comes to the coffee that we sell for kegerators, or the beverage delivery systems that we sell for kegerators. So I'm really excited about doing this, and this is the first one I've done like this, so I wanted to make a little video so that my company would have a copy of that also. So thank you for your participation. All right, so True makes several different kegerators. We make, for residential use, we make a 15-inch and a 24-inch. And the 15-inch and the 24-inch, it's a standard 15-inch, 24-inch depth. The 24-inch is 24 by 24. These are both at 34¼ inches, so they're designed to be counter height, because normally when you do a slab on top of an under counter appliance, it's going to be, you're going to end up at 36 inches, right? So for kegerators, for residential use, that's really good, and that's all that most people are ever going to need. For other uses in our commercial line, we also have an extensive commercial line of products, and in our commercial line, the tabletop height of the kegerator is 37, and what that allows you to do is use different types of kegs, and we'll talk about that also. But for the most part today, we're going to talk about our residential products. The nice thing about the residential line is all of our residential products, except for our ice maker, operate below the level of human audibility, between 30 and 39 decibels. So you can rest assured that once you put this into your home, you won't hear it. Now on the commercial line, because it's made for commercial installations like bars, restaurants, places like that, that really don't care about ambient noise. You got people having conversations, dinner plates clacking, things like that. They are louder, but they're also a lot less expensive. So there's a trade-off, but they're still perfectly appropriate for use in man caves, dens, garages, pool houses, in bar areas, outdoor bar areas, like under a canopy or a pergola that's covered, things of that nature. So there's different reasons why you'd want to install both, and let's talk about that. First, for under-counter kegerators, for residential kegerators, 95% of all kegs in this country for home use are sold by BevMo or Total Wine and More, right? You have those in this town also. So basically, anything that anybody would want as far as a craft beer, a cider, anything like that, they'd be able to go to BevMo or Total Wine and More and get. And if they're just looking for beer or cider, and they just want to dispense that at home, which is a lot of fun. I mean, for like a bar, you have a bar area at home. How many people do you know that can dispense, like, real beer? And there's a big flavor difference, and there's a huge experience difference. And when you're dispensing at home, it's just a lot of fun. It's like a lot of the guys in the neighborhood want to hang out because you have that. So you're really able to get that experience with the home kegerator. But BevMo and Total Wine and More sell almost exclusively just CO2-based beverage products. And the CO2-based beverage product is a regular beer or a cider. So if they just want beer and cider, all that you ever need to sell is the True Kegerator, and then it'll come with all the parts that you need to install it with beer or cider. You don't need anything else. It comes with every single piece that you need in the box to install it. Now, the one thing is, so with BevMo and Total Wine and More, the keg sizes that they're selling are either 5-gallon or 7.5-gallon. Those are the two sizes. And let's talk about that. So the 5-gallon is called a slim, is a 1/6 keg, is the 5 gallon, so it'll hold 5 gallons of liquid. The 7.5 gallon is called a slim quarter keg, right? So a slim quarter keg, and I'll show you here, like inside of this kegerator that we have, and I have coffee installed right this, and I'll pour it for you and I'll show you how it all works. I set this up last night. These are 5 gallon kegs. And this is from a specialty coffee vendor that I use called, hold on a second, Bonafide Nitro Coffee and Tea, and we'll talk more about them. But so going to Total Wine and More or BevMo, those are the two sizes, the thin, tall kegs. They also sell quarter kegs that are the short, squat ones, right? So a short, squat keg will fit inside of this, but then you have the entire upper part of this unused, so it's really kind of defeating the purpose of having a nice 24-inch kegerator to get one of those, also called a pony keg. So a pony keg will fit in here, but why would you do that if you could get 2 different kegs in here instead of the pony keg, right? So those are your limitations. Now what won't fit in here, what most people think of a full keg, everybody's been to a kegger party, right? So most people think of a full keg is really a half keg. There hasn't been a full barrel keg sold in this country for years for like consumer use. So everybody uses the half keg. So the half keg is the big keg that's 15.5 gallons. So the 15.5 gallon keg won't fit in this kegerator because there's not the overhead, the length of the keg, it's too tall to fit in the kegerator. If you want to dispense the 15.5 gallon keg or the half keg, you should get a true commercial kegerator because it'll fit in that because it's got the higher internal capacity, right? So it's 37 instead of 34.25, so it'll fit in that. So if you want to do that, that's great. Just get that, and that's called a TDD-1, and those work beautifully, and it's a great product. It just does not have the insulation of our residential product because it's designed for commercial use, so it's going to be louder. So you want to think twice before you install this in somebody's home in an open floor plan 8 feet from the couch, because they're probably going to hear it when the compressor comes on. That's really the only limitation. They both have great warranties. The residential product line is 3 years full warranty, 6 years on the sealed system. The sealed system is everything that would cost a lot of money to repair. Everything basically that causes the inside of the unit to get cold, the compressor, the evaporator, the lines itself with the refrigerant in there, those are all warranted full in-home parts and labor for 6 years. And then on top of that, the residential line has 12 years parts warranty on the sealed system. So we're really saying that up to 12 years from now, between years 7 and 12, if you have a problem with this, we're going to cover the parts, you pay for labor, because everything needs service eventually, right? The question is not does it need service, but how does the vendor respond when you need service? And we're a very hands-on operation. I can promise you locally that I can provide white glove service for any of your needs. When you sell a product and there's a problem with it, I want you to contact me personally and I'll arrange to have it dispatched for you. So all I need to take care of a problem is the serial number of the product, the address of the consumer, their phone number, their contact information, and a 1-sentence description of what the product is. And then I'm either going to have somebody call and diagnose the issue over the phone, or I'm going to dispatch it immediately depending on what you tell me. But either way, you're unlikely to never hear about the problem again. So that's a service that I want to provide because I can provide better service that way, and we want to provide the best service available in your market anytime a problem happens. Now on the commercial side, the warranty is a straight 7 years. So if you got our TDD-1 system and there was a problem with it, we would 100% cover that for 7 full years. So that's a great warranty on that product. All right, so let's talk about what you can do with these. Now, again, as I said, we provide these with every single part that you need to set this up with your with beer or cider or any carbonated product. Every single thing that you need comes with it. So these are all like explained in the manual. I'm happy to talk to a customer directly. So if you sell this system and somebody needs help, because here's what happens. Everybody knows how to install a refrigerator, nobody or very few people know how to install and finely tune a beverage delivery system. I like it's a hobby of mine. It's something I enjoy doing. I don't mind it. If somebody's stuck, you can give them my cell phone number and I'll help them out over the phone. Happy to do it. It doesn't take me that long. Usually you make a friend for life, and it's somebody who's also very interested in doing that, so it's a shared hobby. So it's okay, I'm happy to do that. So anytime that you have that situation, just let me know. But it's really fully covered in the manual, and all you have to do is follow the steps in the manual to install a keg of beer and set up your kegerator. It's not difficult. The challenge comes in is, say that you want to install something other than beer or cider. And that's where I want to talk to you about everything you can possibly do right now. So what I have this kegerator set up for is with 2 kegs of Nitro brew coffee. Let's talk about Nitro brew coffee. Does everybody know the difference between cold brew and Nitro brew? Probably not, so I'm going to tell you anyway. All right, so here's the difference. When you brew hot coffee, the hot water is exposed to the coffee for really no more than 4 minutes. Is it ever exposed? Like in a drip coffee system, you're basically, the water is filtering through the coffee, through the filter, and basically the most amount of time that the water is going to be in contact with the coffee grounds is about 4 minutes. At the high pressure, all the components of the coffee are coming out in the water, and that's what you're drinking as coffee. You're getting the acid in the coffee. Coffee is acidic. You're getting the acid that comes in the coffee. All the things that are in the coffee are draining into the coffee. So that's like an experience, and that's why people use a lot of creamer and sugar and flavorings and things like that in their coffee, because not everybody likes the taste of plain coffee. I do. I'm a plain coffee person, but most people want something in it, and that's understandable. And that's why when you go to Starbucks and the person in front of you gives us like 5-minute order for a single cup of coffee, and you're sitting there waiting for yours after that. That's what they do. So the difference with cold brew and Nitro brew is this. It's a steeping system. So with cold brew and Nitro brew, they take the coffee and you're putting it in water anywhere between 35 degrees and 70 degrees. It doesn't really matter. Some people claim it does, but most people in a blind taste test can't tell the difference in how it was steeped. And you're steeping it in that water for 12 to 24 hours. So what's happening, because it's not at a high temperature, is what's not coming out of the coffee and into the water is anywhere near as much of the acids or some of the other compounds in the coffee. So what you're getting is a much gentler version of coffee that has a different flavor profile than hot coffee. It's going to be much mellower and much less bitter. So it's a really nice flavor. And the difference is that you usually, like a lot of people like me, really prefer the taste of that to regular coffee, because it is a much mellower, less dramatic flavor. It's a much nicer flavor, and it just basically, it tastes really good. And I'll let everybody taste this after we have this class, and hopefully you'll like it also. So that's how it works. And then, but the difference between, so cold brew, after 12 to 24 hours, they're basically running it through fine filters to get all of the particles out of it, right? Because nobody likes like little coffee particles on their teeth or the grit when you're drinking it. So it's finely filtered. And what you're ending up with is a product that is somewhere between 2 and 3 times the caffeine level of the hot coffee that you had. And it just tastes much different, and it's much richer. So the density of the coffee in the cold brew is much greater. And because it's been in the water so much longer, the caffeine is much stronger. So it's stronger and a denser, it's a much more full flavor. But a lot of people really like that. So the difference between cold brew and Nitro brew is cold brew is dispensed at very low temperature or very low pressure. So cold brew, if you just want cold brew and you get a product from this vendor, Bonafide Nitro Coffee, you can dispense it without changing any of the hardware, because you could dispense it from a standard CO2 faucet at 10 or 11 psi, which is the same exact way that you dispense beer. But the magic in this is not cold brew. The magic, what most people love, what I love, and what I installed here, and what I'm going to talk about today is Nitro brew. So what Nitro brew does differently than cold brew is it imbues the coffee with nitrogen. So Nitro brew is dispensed at 40 psi with nitrogen, and the nitrogen is infused in the coffee, and it's creating just these beautiful little tiny bronze colored bubbles that looks like you're pouring Guinness, and it has a very creamy flavor, and it's just a really rich non-bitter coffee that most people really love. Once they try it, it really grows on you after a while, and after you start drinking it, you know, you want some every day. So it's an acquired taste, but once you like it, you really start liking it. So it's a very creamy flavor. It looks really pretty. You know, you can make a little froth pattern on the top, anything you want to do like that. So it's just a really nice experience, and that's what we have installed here in 2 different flavors. What I've installed here is a medium roast and an organic Ethiopian, and then also a high test, I call high test, which is an organic espresso. So the espresso is stronger than the Ethiopian, but they're both delicious. I'd encourage everybody to try both and see which ones you like. So you can actually, I haven't brought and if you want, I can set you up with little like syrups and things like that if you want to add. At the Concord showroom, I actually have an extensive display with all kinds of different pumped syrups and different sorts of things, and they really love it there, and they really think that it's enhanced, because when somebody comes in the showroom now, instead of would you like a coffee or water, would you like a coffee, a water, or a Nitro brew? And it's a special thing to be able to offer that. And people go, what's that? I haven't tried that. So Nitro brew was invented in 2012 by a couple of guys in Austin, Texas, and it just took off like a wildfire, and it's become very popular since. Every Starbucks in the United States has got a tap that has cold brew and Nitro brew. So you can go into any Starbucks and get that. So what I have installed, the kegs that I've installed cost $195 shipped each for each keg. Now it sounds like a lot until you realize that first, that's 80 cups of coffee, 80 8-ounce cups of coffee, and at that cost, it's about $2.50 a cup. So that size cup at Starbucks for Nitro brew is $7. So it's a significant cost savings over what you can get in the store, and you don't have to tip anybody unless it's your daughter or somebody pouring it for you. So that's how that works. So it's just a really nice experience, and it's been around since I mentioned 2012, and it's become very popular, and it's becoming more and more known. So people are really becoming aficionados of it. And that's really, so here's what happens with Nitro brew. First, so when we ship this, we're shipping out everything you need for CO2. Now we sell a complete nitrogen conversion kit, True does, but you can only use it under one very limited circumstance, and that circumstance is if you want to make your own Nitro brew coffee in home. Now typically the people that are buying these systems are affluent, and they don't want to fiddle with making all of their own stuff, and they're not that much of a hobbyist. They do want the convenience and the coolness of having this in their home, but they don't want to do all the work normally. And in that kind of situation, that's fine. They could just use the coffee vendor that I'm recommending, Bonafide Coffee, and what they'll do is they'll send full kegs of coffee, UPS. So they're plastic kegs, you don't need to return them. It's PET, so they're totally recyclable. You can recycle them with your plastic bottles or throw them out or whatever you normally do. And that's all, so it's that, and the kegs that they send out, because they're charged with nitrogen when they're sent out, there's no oxygen in the gas exposed to the coffee, and it's just like with wine, right? If there's no oxygen exposed, the product inside never oxidizes, and it's got a shelf life of a year or longer. So when you get a keg, don't worry about what the date says on it. It's not bad. It has a shelf life of 1 to 3 years, the product that they send out. So you got that, and it's just really stable. The problem with trying to make your own Nitro or cold brew from home is this. First, You then need to buy some expensive stainless steel tanks to make it yourself, like a 5-gallon stainless steel tank. And then you need basically to know what you're doing, and you got to like mix it up according to whatever kind of formula you're following to do it. And at the same time, that product, you would then pour that 5 gallons. It would take 2 people to lift that probably and pour it into what's called a cornufe keg. So a cornufe keg, in the 1950s, a company called Cornelius Inc. invented the cornufe keg, and it was originally part of what was called a pre-mix system. So the pre-mix systems in beverage delivery it's like for soda vendors that wanted to, like Coke and Pepsi and everything, that wanted to dispense out of soda fountains. What they did at the time, before the modern system that they're just using syrup boxes and they're coming out of faucets and they're mixing their CO2, and they're in a post-mix system, they're mixing it as it's dispensed. The previous system was called a pre-mix system. So basically, somebody mix up the exact correct amount of syrup and the exact correct amount of carbonated water, and they pour this into a cornufe keg, now also called a corny keg for short, in case you hear the term. And then it would all be sealed up, and then they would dispense that until it ran out, and then the cornufe keg would be cleaned and refilled and then put back into use. So in the late 70s, somebody came up with a post-mix system, and it was a lot less expensive because we're a disposable society. Instead of like doing this work, they could just basically in a factory make boxes of syrup and then use a CO2 cylinder at high pressure and connect the box of syrup and the water to a beverage dispensing fountain. And then that, like when you go to any fast food place, that's what they're dispensing there, is a post-mix system. So all of a sudden on the market in the early 80s, there was millions of cornufe kegs that were like no longer used. So it became widely used in the hobbyist market for people to kind of like mix up anything they wanted and then dispense that from a beverage dispenser. So I know guys that are dispensing Jack and Coke at home. Really, I could tell you how to make sangria and dispense that. Really, you could make your own kombucha. Really, anything that you could possibly imagine, right? You can dispense from one of these kegerators. And let's talk about how to do that. So before I really get further into the coffee, let's talk about what your options are. First, there are the faucets. The faucets that you need, the faucets that we ship with a unit are good for CO2 or anything that is low pressure that is going to be dispensed around 10 or 11 psi. Those faucets will work perfectly for that. For anything that you're dispensing at high pressure or for nitro coffee, you need nitrogen faucets. So the first thing that you need, and this is what I have on here. So these are nitrogen faucets. CO2 faucets are much shorter and more squat looking. And the reason that these are necessary is these are pressurized at 40 psi, and there's a little disc inside of the faucet here that looks like a little washer, and it's got 5 little tiny holes in it. So when I open up this faucet and I pour this, it dispenses in there at super high pressure through these tiny little pinholes, and that's what gives you the beautiful aeration and the creamy look and the golden bubbles when you're dispensing the coffee. So just keep that in mind. So the first thing you need, and in the video that I send you after this class, I'm gonna have all the product links that I recommend. You could just go to Amazon and here's what I recommend, because things that I use all the time, right? So these faucets are about 50 bucks each on Amazon. And these are high quality 304 stainless steel American made faucets, which is everything I recommend. And they just install with a spanner wrench. Basically you get a little wrench, and I'll include like a little link for that. And that you use that to span this round connection right here, and it twists it off. So before you install everything, the first thing you want to do is replace your faucets, because if you try to replace the faucets after you have your beverages installed and the system is pressurized, the liquid will shoot out and you'll have the biggest mess that you could ever possibly imagine. So the first thing that you do if you're replacing coffee is to replace the faucets. So once you have your faucets replaced, and these are on, and they're all straight, and they're really nice looking, it's really not that difficult to do. Basically, the next thing that you're gonna do is replace the pressure regulator for coffee, for nitrogen. So there's two kinds of pressure regulators. This is the one that we provide. This is a high quality American made pressure regulator. This one is by Taprite. The Kegcos are really good also, but this one is by Taprite, and this is the one that True provides with your Kegerator. And what this does, this only works on CO2. So the threads on this are opposite to the threads on the other one that you're going to use for the Nitro brew system. So for the Nitro brew system, you're going to use a pressure regulator that's designed for nitrogen, but can also be used for argon, right? So argon you're going to use for if you want to go to a winery and get a keg of wine, or you want to dump a bunch of wine into a creamier keg and dispense that yourself, you're going to use one of these pressure regulators. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to replace the True provided CO2 pressure regulator with this nitrogen pressure regulator. Now this attaches to the side of the gas bottle that we provide. So we provide a 5-pound CO2 tank, a beautiful new quality 5-pound CO2 tank. And if you want to dispense beer or cider, that's great. You can go to Airgas or Lindy or any welding supply company locally and have them fill that for you. And they're going to charge you about $35 to charge that with 5 pounds of CO2, which is the limit of the canister. Now, the thing that you're always going to want to do in advance is call in advance and reserve food grade, right? So you're going to want to, whatever gas that you get, argon, nitrogen, or CO2, depending on your purpose, you're always going to ask for food grade. Normally, they're not going to stock that because they're a welding supply company, but they're happy, any of them are happy to order that for you and get it. Now, I have to tell you, it's really not a big deal because the difference between industrial and food grade gases are simply this. They come out of the exact same tank at the welding supply company or whoever fills them. It's just the food grade is tested. The industrial gases are not tested. The food grade is tested to make sure that there's nothing, nothing toxic in the gas. The standard industrial ones aren't tested because who cares? So nitrogen is really 70% of our atmosphere. 70% of the air we breathe is nitrogen. So it's really not an issue as far as toxic go, but just to, because we have bougie customers who spend $800 a week at Whole Foods, and they're really concerned about everything, just ask for food grade, and that way nobody will ever come back at you with any kind of discontent. It's just a really simple thing to do. It just always, you got to plan about 2 or 3 days in advance to request food grade because they're probably not going to have it in stock. So when you want to trade, you want to replace, you want to install Nitro coffee instead of CO2, what you're going to do is take your CO2 canister, again, to Airgas, Lindy, any welding supply company in America will trade you straight across your CO2 tank for a nitrogen tank. So here's what they're going to ask you. What size nitrogen tank do you want? And you're going to say you want a 20 cubic foot nitrogen tank. So the number terminology for the CO2 tank is 5 pounds. The number terminology that you want for the nitrogen tank is a 20 cubic foot. And they'll probably try to say, well, here, take this 40 instead. It's the same price because the 40 is a much larger canister. The 40 will not fit into this. You need a 20. You must have a 20 to install this. You can't use a 40. It's too big to fit in. All right. So you take the nitrogen regulator that I'm going to provide you an Amazon link for, and you use some Teflon tape over the threads. And basically you just turn it on, you get like a 10-inch crescent wrench, and you just turn it as hard as it will go on. And then your pressure regulator is installed correctly on the tank. Now when you're doing this, always, you see these levers right here, right? These are in the off position. In the off position, your levers are at right angles or 90 degrees to your valves right here, your gas valves right here. this is the on position. So you never turn them in the on position until you're ready to activate the pressure in your keg. So you're going to start out, so on, off, right? So you're going to start out with everything in the off when you do that. So the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to connect the coupler to the lines. So one of these lines is 1/4, so the gas lines are 5/16. The beverage dispensing lines are 1/4. And the reason that I have to tell you this, you're going to say, well, this doesn't fit on there. That's because you're not installing it on the right barbed connector. One is much narrower than the other. You remember last night when I was installing this, when I asked for boiling water? All right, the reason I asked for boiling water is the rubberized lines on this that fit over these barbed connectors, they're very difficult to get on because the lines themselves are very rigid. But if you stick it in boiling water for like 15 seconds, they become very loose and they'll easily slip over the barbed connector. And then when the temperature comes down, then they're hard and rigid again. So the way to do this, the industry trick, is just stick it in a cup of boiling water. They stick onto the lines, and then you just clamp them on and you're fully installed. So the next thing that you need to do is connect everything to the coupler, and the coupler is what sits on and attaches to the keg itself. And I'll pull out the kegs and I'll show you. But the coupler, there are 3 different types of couplers, actually 4. We'll talk about 4 different kinds of couplers available in the US. So the key to being able to be an expert on this and confidently tell your customer you can dispense anything from a True Kegerator is knowing what coupler to use with what kind of beverage product. So with a CO2 product, and this is like about 95% of everything used in the United States, is going to use a Sankey D coupler. I'm a S-A-N-K-E-Y initial D coupler. That's the most popular one for American use. That is the one in use for every American and craft beer. Every American and craft beer and cider product is going to use a Sankey D coupler. True provides this Sankey D coupler in your box, in the box with your product. And if all you want to do is dispense beer or cider, then again, you could just install the parts that we did and everything else. But if you're doing anything else with the product, with the coffee product that I provided, it also installs with the Sankey D coupler. And the beautiful thing about this is you can just use that same coupler. Say that you're doing coffee now and you want to maybe have the option, like around the holidays, like people come over for Christmas and Halloween parties, you want to dispense beer for those. It's super simple. All you've got to do is get an extra keg from your welding supply company. So you already traded out, here's a scenario, you've already traded out your CO2 gas canister, and you have and you have a nitrogen pressure regulator on your nitrogen canister, but now it's Halloween, you want to have a party and you want to do beer again. All you have to do is trade out, get a CO2 canister, and then you already have the CO2 pressure regulator from when you got your True Kegerator new. So you're just replacing your nitrogen system, the nitrogen canister with the attached pressure regulator, with the CO2 one that we originally sent you. And then because the Sankey D coupler that attaches to the keg is the exact same for this coffee brand that I'm recommending and for your beer or cider, you don't need to change anything else. Really, you can change out from nitrogen to a CO2 product within minutes. And Party Central, you can be pouring beer in 5 minutes. You really can. So the complication comes in when you want to do something exotic. So of the different sorts of couplers you can get, we talked about the Sankey D coupler, which is 95%, that's all that people are ever going to need. There's also a European beer coupler. Say that you want to dispense Warsteiner or Heineken. Now, they would be imported from like overseas. The whole keg would be imported from overseas, and you'd have a keg, And it's hard to get those kegs, and I don't think you can get those kegs at BevMo or Total Wine & More, but in large urban areas you can. So large urban areas with like a strong interest in different beers, and a lot of the specialty home brewing places will have like big coolers full of all kinds of exotic stuff, and you can go in there and pick out what you want. So it's a different coupler. So the coupler provided with this kegerator, or the one that I'm recommending to use for coffee or for American beer, is not going to work with European beer, and it's also not going to work with Guinness. So here's what you're going to do. This requires, because this is limited overhead space and it's going under a countertop, this requires what's called a lowboy or low profile coupler, right? So there's only 3 or 4 low profile couplers for CO2 or for Sankey D couplers on the market. I know this is a lot of information, but I'm going to send this out as a video, and you're also going to get links to what I'm talking about. Once you look at the links, it'll be very obvious. Your typical coupler, the standard one that like bars use and that would go into like most people would be familiar with, is going to be a coupler that's about 4 or 5 inches tall. You can't use those in this system because overhead space is so limited. So you see how short this is. Your standard coupler would be about this tall by comparison. So this won't fit, this will fit. A full-size coupler won't fit into your under-counter True Kegerator. And that's important for the next step. So if you want to dispense a European beer, that's called an S coupler. S is in Sierra. And you can get a low-profile S coupler on Amazon also, if you want to dispense like Warsteiner or Heineken or something like that. So now you know how to answer that question if it comes up. The next type of coupler is a U coupler. A U coupler would be to dispense Guinness. So if you wanted to dispense Guinness, first of all, Guinness would be dispensed using nitrogen rather than CO2. And back in the day, it was a hand draw system under pressure. So you were hand drawing it, and as part of the draft, it would fill the cup and it would do all this. And what the nitrogen system that works with Guinness does is it aerates the inside of it, aerates that as you pour, as you dispense, to give you the same experience from a kegerator that you used to be getting from a hand-drawn system. So it's actually very, very smart. So here's the problem with dispensing Guinness. There is no such thing as a low-profile U coupler. The only couplers that will work with Guinness, the U coupler, are the 5-inch tall ones, and for those, they won't fit into a true under-counter kegerator, but they will fit into a commercial True Kegerator, a TDD1 system. So Guinness is available in large, urban areas with like a big population that would support like specialty stuff like that in 20, 30, and 50 liter kegs. And if you get a U coupler and a true commercial kegerator, a TD1, you can dispense it because the people who like Guinness are like really, it's like people who really are into something, that's all that they want. So you can do it, you just can't do it with this product that I'm showing you today, all right? And then finally, how do you dispense using a system that you would fill yourself, a true, like a cornufe or a corny keg? Well, the Nitro conversion kit that we sell comes pre-configured to be used with a cornufe keg system. So it has special connectors on it. So it's a ball lock connector, and it's like a special name you just kind of screw on and it goes on there. So if you have somebody that truly wants to make their own beverages and they want to dispense it out of using nitrogen, they can just get our nitrogen conversion kit and replace the draft tower and then just stick it on there. It's totally turnkey, it'll work perfectly, and that's all that they need. But as long as they know that they're gonna have to fill and maintain their own kegs and do it like that, then they're fine. But like I said, any kind of drink that you could possibly imagine, as long as you filter it, there's not like a bunch of like floaters in it, right? You have to fine filter it so that nothing clogs on the inside of the faucets. really, I've seen like all kinds of crazy stuff, you know, and like people doing sangrias. So if you're really into parties and you like doing themes based upon your party, you want your beverages to match whatever theme that you're doing for your party, that's just a great way to do it, is to make your own beverages as you go and fill up your kegerator. And a lot of people that are really into that are really into that. So anything, and a lot of people just want to drink only like Jack and Coke, as I mentioned, and if you just want to drink that, you know, you can get a bunch of, you know, liter bottles of Coke and pour in a couple bottles of Jack, and once it tastes the way that you like it, seal up your creamier keg, pressurize it, and then you could dispense that. Now, in the case of Jack and Coke, you do that with CO2, so you'd get an additional coupler. You'd get a standard creamier ball lock coupler to do that, and then just dispense that using CO2. So in that case, the only part that you would replace would be the coupler, right? Everything, if you just wanted to dispense Jack and Coke, you'd only need to replace the coupler. But everything else you could use as was provided by True. All right, so who has questions so far? It's a lot of information. I know it's probably flying over your head, but you know, every time that I learn something, I find that even if it seems overwhelming, all the information blasting at me, the second or third time that I hear it is when it sticks. So that's why I provide so much information, is that more information than you probably want or need right now. But the second or third time that you encounter this is when you'll hear about it. So let's talk about what I've done here. So again, the kegs are in there, and the regulator inside that you can't see, and I'll pull one out real quick. There's nothing to be concerned about or worried about here. You can see that there is a nitrogen canister inside of there, and if you looked inside, you would see that it was set to 40 psi. So let me give another pitch right here. The biggest misconception about beer, everybody wants to have ice cold beer, right? Everybody thinks, okay, so they're going to try to set the temperature as low as possible. And the problem is, when you set the temperature as low as possible, the problem with CO2 is the colder it gets, the more CO2 is absorbed into the liquid, right? So CO2 becomes much more dense and much more absorbed into the beer the lower the temperature. So every brewer in the world recommends storing and dispensing beer at 37 degrees, because at 37 degrees, the CO2 beer mix is perfect. The florals you get, so it really enhances the flavor, everything about it. You're gonna get the best flavored beer at 37 degrees, not 33 degrees. Common misunderstanding, right? When you do it at 33 degrees, what happens is the density of the CO2 in the beer is much greater, and CO2 is carbonic acid. So carbonic acid, the reason that you taste the bite against your throat and on your tongue when you're drinking carbonated beverages is the acid in what you're doing. So at a lower temperature, you're getting a lot more of that acid. You're using the CO2 much faster, and it's just a much more dense thing. So the flavor is much better at 37 rather than 33. Now, but what everybody wants is ice cold beer. So the trick is, you know, also in addition to selling this kegerator, also sell freezer drawers, right? So with a kegerator and a set of freezer drawers, you've got your mugs in the freezer drawer. So you take your frozen mug out and you dispense beer into that. And so the beer ices up, but it's not adding any additional CO2 to the beer. So you're getting like little ice crystals in your beer, but the perfect flavor and, you know, olfactory experience. It's just the absolute gourmet way to drink beer is with iced up mugs. Everybody got that? Mm-hmm. All right. So don't set your, this does allow you to set it down to 33. Don't set it at 33. Always set it at 37. Anytime that you sell one of these, have a conversation with your customer to explain this, that, you know, the common mistake people make, etc. And just say you really want your beer dispensed at 37. That's going to give you the best flavor. And really, as far as like the taste on their tongue, most people can't tell the difference between 33 and 37, but they will get a much better flavor at 37 than they will at 33. Anybody have any questions? No questions? All right. So this is also set at 37 for coffee. So anything you're dispensing out of this, just set at 37 for best results. So I showed you that this is at 40 PSI. The other thing, beer is always at the minimum pressure that you need to have it flow from the tap. And that's going to be somewhere between 9 and 11 PSI. Every brewer in the world recommends dispensing at about 10 PSI. So you don't want it higher than that, and you don't want to just casually set the dial, because there's a little red dial on the pressure regulator, and you turn it one way, it goes down, you turn it the other way, that it goes up. So for beer, set it at 10. For coffee, nitrogen, set it at 40, right? And if you have any question about what to set it for, email me, and I'll respond in 5 minutes, and I'll tell you what to do. Any kind of these specialty things, just let me know and I'll help you out. Be happy to. So that's really all that there is to it. And then once you do that, you'll have a great experience with your customers. So I've got a couple of these, I got a couple glass mugs, and I just want to show you what happens. So with beer, one of the common complaints about beer is that it's too foamy, or I don't know, I can't pour it, or there's something wrong with the kegerator because it's all foam. Well, the kegerator really is just getting the product inside cold, and if it's getting the product inside cold, it's working correctly. What's creating the foam is an improper setting on the pressure line, or you're not pouring it correctly. So let's talk about how to pour beer. So when you're pouring beer and it's at a low pressure, you're basically tilting the glass. You see when a bartender in a bar, they're pouring a beer into a glass from a dispenser, they're pouring it at an angle. So rather than going straight down and impacting on the liquid in the bottom of the glass and the liquid below it, which is creating like a lot of foam, they're gently sliding it in there and swirling it around the glass as it pours. And that's going to give you the result, is the optimal result for a poured beer is a head of about 1/4 inch, right? So you're looking for about 1/4 inch bubbles. If you're getting all bubbles, you're not doing it correctly. Or the pressure is too high on the inside of the unit, or the temperature is too low. Because as I mentioned, if you have this at 33 degrees, the density of the CO2 is much higher in the beer itself. And what's gonna happen then is, because there's more CO2, that's what's causing the foam. It's totally gonna foam up. You're gonna have a problem dispensing at a very low temperature. So always 37 degrees, tilt the glass, 10 PSI, right? And you should have a really nice experience. Now, the opposite is with coffee. So when you're dispensing coffee, you're gonna want to just pour it straight down in there, because you want the bubbles. The bubbles look really cool. It's giving you a really nice flavor when you're doing it. And so that's gonna, see how that's like forming like a little froth on the top? So I just set this up. So the pressure is not like really equalized between the two yet, but so you see how this is really a nice little, really creamy experience on the inside. It's got like some really nice like little bubbles on the top. And see how it's right now, after just settling for a couple seconds, it's dark on the bottom and amber colored on the top. That's what you want. And that's how simple this is once you set it up correctly. So the one thing that I want to remind everybody of is because the caffeine in nitro and cold brew is 2 to 3 times higher than regular coffee, you don't want to be drinking it out of a big gulp cup. You want to just try 8 ounces. So 8 ounces of this coffee will give you a much better kick than an energy drink like a Red Bull. It really is. It's the perfect afternoon pick-me-up, and that's why I have one in the bench of my workshop in my at home. So in the afternoon, I can reach for one of these coffees, and like I'm zooming again and fully alert, and working on power tools and having a great time, and that's what I enjoy doing. So all you need, I would recommend just 8-ounce cups to dispense into, and one of these kegs will serve 80 cups at 8 ounces each. It's about $2.50 a beer, and as I mentioned, a comparable size at Starbucks is $6.50 to $7. So it's actually really good, very economical. Plus you have the convenience of not having to go through Starbucks drive-through. You just do it out of your own home. It's a wonderful thing to offer your guests, and it's something that I really recommend for everybody. And also, with all this stuff in your store, you only have a couple of interactive products, right? Everything else in your store, these are all beautiful appliances, right? But for the most part, your interaction with the refrigerator is putting a box in, taking a box out. That's no fun, right? What's fun is when you can do a live ice maker, and you know the ice maker producing ice, and you're showing it inside, you're scooping out ice for somebody, or like with this kegerator, you're actually pouring products with them, you're getting the customer's hands on it, and you can say, would you like to try this? And then they do, and hopefully they fall in love with the machine and then the flavor and the taste, and they want to buy one. And that's how you sell stuff, I think, is getting the customer's hands on it to use it, and then they start envisioning themselves and using it at home, and they have a wonderful experience like that. So definitely, so what I did was I provided the first 2 kegs of coffee. You're on your own after that. Here's what I suggest. I suggest you getting some 3-ounce cups, right, for customer use. And don't let anybody come in with a big gulp, because really Starbucks on their largest venti size, you can't even buy that as cold brew or nitro brew because they think it's too much caffeine. So there's no safety issue associated with this, but I'm telling you, if you drank that much, you'd be zooming. You don't need that much. If you want the same kind of buzz you'd get off of an energy drink, you really only, or even more, you know, an 8-ounce cup is gonna fit the bill. Does anybody have any questions on how to dispense anything from a True Kegerator, or what kegerator to use, or what parts to use? So I'm gonna upload this video, and I'm gonna post all the notes and the product links below this. So if you need like different parts, you know where to go, they can get them. And you can call me anytime, and I'll be delighted to help you out with this, because I actually love doing this, and it's something I enjoy helping other people out with. All right?
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.